Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Cherry Blossom Bloom, and I'm sipping on some vanilla chai tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so what I'm going to be using for materials today is a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, cobalt blue, Mars black, fluorescent pink, burnt umber, which I like to call brown, chrome yellow, and green oxide. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have 3 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush, a number 6 round synthetic brush, and a number 0 round synthetic brush. And I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same type and size canvas to the same kind of paint and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to paint the background. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are blue and white. And I called it the background, but it's really going to be your sky and part of the reflection in the water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create myself a nice light kind of sky blue type of a color, or vibrant sky blue color. I'm going to put that at the top and at the bottom, and then I'm going to fade it into a lighter version in the middle. So that's going to give us some atmospheric dimension in the sky, and then it's going to have the reflection down at the bottom for the water. So I have pre-mixed myself my color so I can show you where I'm headed. So how I got to this was I just mixed white in my cobalt blue. You do not need a lot of white. It will turn it light really, really fast. Okay, it's kind of going in the opposite direction on me. So you don't need a lot of white. Just add it a little bit at a time. If you have the kit from us, you can mix all of your blue, because we're not going to be using it later. So you can completely mix it all. Just try not to go too light, because you can't make it any darker once you've got it, once it goes light on you. So that's looking pretty good to me. So what I'm going to do, maybe a little bit lighter than that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the top of my canvas with this nice, beautiful sky blue that I've created. And I'm going to be painting it on with a left to right brush stroke. So I don't need to do anything too fancy here. I'm not going to be adding a lot of movement with clouds or anything like that. So I'm really just looking to get a nice coverage on in through here. I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom of my canvas. So I'm just picking up that same blue and just painting the bottom. I'm coming maybe about, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches into the canvas. You can certainly come further or less, whatever is speaking to you. Maybe you want yours to be a lighter variation, so maybe you're gonna make yours, you know, with more white or whatever the case may be. So now that I've got that on, now I'm just going to start adding white to my brush and moving into the middle. So I have my light blue plus white on my brush, and I'm going to get this to go lighter and lighter as it comes down my canvas or towards that center of the canvas. So I just did that in through there. I'll do the same thing down at the bottom with a more white on my brush, and I'm just getting these to blend in. Now I can probably just get away with picking up white on my dirty brush and moving in towards the center of my canvas. So you might find that your lightest region ends up a little higher or lower than mine. Whatever happens will completely work out. This is going to be, a lot of this lightness is going to be hidden or behind our landscape. So if your gradient is, you know, a little higher or lighter or darker than mine, don't worry about it. It's just a matter of giving that impression of the atmosphere kind of going lighter and lighter down towards the landscape, and then a similar reflection in the water. So once I have the paint on there, I like to just kind of move my brush back and forth to get some nice blending going on, and this way it allows it to create a nice even kind of level of my paint, and it also gets all of those colors to really talk well together. And then I will be using this same brush for the next step. So you might find that you want to do a second layer, or you might want to just let it dry for a minute, see if there's anything more that you want to do to it. But once you've got it all nice and in your visual preference, you can take this brush, wash it, dry it, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to do the first layer of our landscape. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. I'm going to be using black and green. I do want to forewarn you that before you start this step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take an extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry, or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be giving myself kind of a, we'll call it a land line where the land is going to meet the water, and then I'm going to be creating a dark layer for the first layer of my landscape. This is going to provide us with a nice deep base for all of the trees to go on, which will make them have a lot of dimension in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of black paint on my brush. I'm going to create a line going across. So where I'm going to have this, I'm going to have it a little bit below my halfway mark. So if this is about halfway up or down my canvas, I'm about 1.5 inches to 2 inches below that. So I'll make myself a little bit of a marker. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush and I'll use that as a measuring tool to see how far up I went. I'm going to come over onto the other side and create a mark at about the same height. Then what I'm going to do is in kind of a quick motion, just kind of connect these two, keeping my eye on the prize, which is the other dot. So I've got those connected in through there. Doesn't have to be a perfect line. This is just something that's going to give us a good starting point. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up green and black on my brush at the same time. So I have both green oxide and black on my brush at the same time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the illusion of treetops. I want them to be very short over on this side. So I'm only going to come up maybe about 1.5 inches to 2 inches on this side. And then on this side, this is going to come up almost about halfway between my my black line here and the top of my canvas. So somewhere in through, I would say like here is as high as they're going to go on that side. And you don't need any special brush stroke. What I'm going to most likely be doing is just this circular type of brush stroke to give myself the appearance of soft kind of circular shapes at the top of the tree line. So as I go through this, I'm not terribly concerned about it being perfect, or even if there's some streakiness to my paint. I am now going to alternate picking up green and black. So right now, without washing my brush, I'm picking up green paint, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start giving myself the illusion of treetops. So I'm going to give myself almost like these soft edges to it. You don't have to make them all exactly the same circular type of shape as you're going down this. Maybe you've got a short one in through here and maybe a taller one in through there. And then maybe the next time I pick up paint, I pick up a little bit of black paint. So as I'm coming towards this left-hand side, I'm getting them to go shorter and shorter. And I would say probably right about here is where I'll start to level them out, where they're going to be all about the same height, but you could certainly have yours going whichever way you want. I just picked up more green paint, and I'm going to go ahead and do this in through here. And because I'm alternating kind of that green and the black, what's happening is I'm starting to naturally just get dimension within these without even doing much work at all. And I'm just using the edge of my brush to give myself these uneven kind of tops to it. Now that I've got that in place, I want to start the reflection of this as well. So I know that I want my reflection to be a little bit softer looking than what I'm going to have here up at the top. I want the top to look a little bit more in focus. So I'm going to probably not even add any more paint to my brush during this process. I'm going to first start by going left to right near there. I want to kind of have a little bit of a visual idea as to where those two kind of meet, just for future reference purposes. And I feel like I have almost a little bit too much green there, so I'm just going to push my brush to see if I can get some more black into it. There we go. Got a little bit more black into it. That's good. And then actually I want a little bit more black. I want a little bit more black up top because it's going to emulate what's going on up top and through there. And then once I've kind of started the process, now all I'm going to do is I'm going to really faintly, just with whatever the remnants are on my brush, give myself a soft reflection down in the water. I'm using more of a dry brush technique, so this way it maintains these soft edges to it. I will be doing much more information as the process continues with adding more detail up top. I just really ran out of paint, so I had to reload a little bit. And I'm going into more of a greener zone over here, so I picked up a little bit more green on my brush. And this one's pretty shallow, so I'm gonna just make sure that I don't go too far down into my canvas. I want to maintain that similar appearance. And again, if you feel that you have to pick up more paint, like I feel like I am totally running out, I'd rather run out and have to add more paint than to go overboard and almost put too much paint unnecessarily. So I just kind of always err on the side of caution, and when I need to put more paint, I do. So I'm watching the tops of these. If this one's a little bit taller than this one, then that means it should come down a little bit further in the water. And that's what's going to give you the best illusion of a believable reflection. And then once you've got this done, we are going to be using our small brush for the next step. So you can put this large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint some tree trunks. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, and white. And what I'm going for is just really the illusion that this is a forest or a beautiful park, and there's hundreds of trees that make up this entire landscape in through here. So I'm going to be using my small brush, and I'm going to be using some nice, quick, just impressionistic style lines or mark making. They're going to be vertical. Some will have a little bit of a bend to them. Some will be thicker than others. And I'm just going to create this depth and illusion to it. So I'm picking up black, brown, and white, all three colors on my brush at the same time. And I'm going to go pretty fast. I'm just going to kind of start and give myself this impressionistic kind of movement with my brush, allowing for it to have maybe some little diagonal pieces to make it look like there's maybe some broken branches and stuff in through here. I'm trying not to make it too consistent, so you can have like a little clump of them in through here and then maybe skip a little bit and then maybe have some coming over in through here. The more inconsistent you make it, and the more, you know, maybe you've got some darker ones in the back. I just picked up a little bit more black on my brush, so maybe these ones are a little bit darker. The more you can show variety in it, the more it's going to look natural. And like this is a believable landscape that we're looking at. We're going to have a little bit of a ground in front of it in a minute, but right now I'm just kind of giving the impression that there's a whole bunch of little tree trunks. Every time I go to pick up paint, I'm picking up my brown, black, and white, and I'm not being too mindful as to the quantity of each one. So sometimes I've got more brown, like right now I've got a little bit more brown. These ones over here to me would be a little bit smaller, so I'm just making them a little bit shorter and just giving these quick little mark making movements to my brush to allow for these to look just like they're little tiny tree trunks, maybe a couple of branches here and there. And then once you've got this done, if you feel like you've done too much, just paint it over with black. That's totally fine. And then once you've got this done, we're going to be using our large brush for the next step. So you can put your small brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our back trees and their reflection. So I'm referring to my back trees are going to be more green, evergreen type of trees at the top of this landscape. And then I'll have front trees, which are going to be all those blossoming cherry trees that we'll be putting on later. So I'm just working on the ones at the top of this landscape. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are brown, yellow, green, white, and if I feel I want to go into any other color, I'll let you know. So really what I'm just looking to do is put a little bit of sunshine on the top of these trees, and how I'm going to do that is predominantly with green, but I also don't want to go too green, so I like to incorporate the brown. I'll also be using some yellow and some white as well. So I'm going to start with green paint on my brush, and I'm also going to be, once I've got the highlights on the top of these trees, I'll put the little reflection of it in the water as well. So I started just with green paint on my brush, and I'm going to start the process of putting these bits of highlights on the tops of these trees. When I'm doing this process, I am trying to think, okay, well, this is a tree and this is a tree, but I don't necessarily want them to look super separate because that will look unnatural if we have a whole bunch of balls of the top. So I like them to overlap. I also like to, when I'm working on the colors getting brighter, I like to go outside of my original footprint of that particular area, so that way whatever color I have on my brush kind of provides a little bit of a glow around the edge of that particular tree. So I've just got green on my brush right now, and I know my whole row of my pink trees are going to go in front and through here, so I'm really just concentrating on the top. I'm not overpainting it, which means I'm leaving some dark spots in throughout there as well, but the green is what's providing me with this initial kind of pass of a highlight type of color and giving myself a little bit more information or detail around the edges of that tree. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a tiny bit on my dirty brush of brown, yellow, and green. So I have brown, yellow, and green on my brush, and this is going to start to add this little twinkle of highlight in through the tops of the trees. I'm careful not to, again, overpaint it, and I just picked up a little bit more brown to get on this right hand side here. I will be, oops, I had a little bit of white on my brush too, which I was just going to say, I'm not putting white on my brush yet, but it accidentally snuck on there. I'm careful not to use white yet because I know that the second I start using white, it will get very, very soft and take on the light value, and I won't be able to kind of go back and tweak some of these other areas. So I reserve the use of white for last. So again, I've just got yellow, brown, and white on my brush right now, trying to add a little bit of that springtime yellow glow in through here. The brown just helps to neutralize it so it's not too bright. And that's looking pretty good to me. So now I'm going to pick up a teeny tiny bit of white paint. And when I say teeny tiny bit, I mean a teeny tiny bit on my dirty brush. And that's going to start my highlight process. So once I've got that on there, I'm just tapping it with the corner of my brush. My paint underneath on the canvas is still a little bit wet, so that's helping me to blend these colors a little bit. If you felt that you wanted to use a smaller brush, feel free to do so. I'm just kind of utilizing the tip of my brush to put these nice highlights on the edges. I'm not doing the whole tree. I'm just really kind of trying to get that tippy top or the edges of it to show that the sun is just kind of kissing the top of it without adding too much into it. And if you feel you want more green, I just picked up a little bit more green so you can have different values to your lightness. So I picked up a little bit of green and white. So maybe as you're going farther away and these trees are getting smaller and smaller, maybe you drop the yellow and you just keep picking up white, and that'll make it look like it's sinking back into the atmosphere a little bit more, because the color will be a little bit duller if you don't use as much yellow in it. If you're using green and white, it'll be a little bit softer and more in the distance looking than if there was a lot of yellow in it. And then once I've got that done, what I'm going to do, I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I'm going to use those remnants to create a little bit of grassy edge to my riverbank, or whatever kind of land or waterway you think that this is. I just picked up a little bit more brown too, so maybe it looks a little grassy and a little sandy. I'm going right in between these areas. You can even kind of kick it up in between some of those trees if you want to. And I'm really just looking to have something that resembles a shoreline, something that's got a little bit of an area where maybe people could walk. If you feel like this brush is too big, you could certainly switch to your smaller brush. And then I'm just going to kind of scoot this in a little bit in through here, wherever I had that vacant, I can see my blue behind it, just kind of put in a little bit of the ground in there. And then I'm going to also just use the remnants on my brush to bring down a little bit of this reflection. So just a little bit of that paint on my brush. I feel like the left side is a bit brighter. I'm going to put probably a little bit of green on there in a minute too, but just kind of I like using the remnants on my brush whenever I can. So right now I'm feeling like I can get away with it. And I'm going to now pick up a tiny bit more green just to make sure that I've got enough green in my reflection. And I know, again, I'm going to be putting a lot of other information with my pink trees. I'm letting my reflection be nice and soft, as if this water is just kind of gently moving back and forth. I'm not doing a ton of detail to it, just because I don't want my reflection to steal the show. But you can certainly, like, I just picked up a little bit more green, want to make sure that I have the colors in there represented from above, and just really very little bit of paint on my brush, putting in a nice soft reflection down in through here. And then once we've got this done, we're going to be using this same brush for the next step. I do recommend you just letting it dry for a minute, and if you feel that you want to do any tweaking or adjusting, feel free to do so. And then maybe I'm going to put a little bit more white in my reflection too, just to make sure I've got those bright edges from the trees above represented. And then we're going to use this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this big brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the front trees. So I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. I'm going to be using pink, black, white, and if I feel like I need to use any other colors, I will. So these are going to be the beautiful pink trees in through here. They are going to be reflected in the water in through here. I didn't do reflections of my tree trunks because I just didn't feel like, I thought the water was soft enough where it didn't really need it and it might not show. But if you felt that you want to do a couple of reflections of your tree trunks, you could do that. I'm not going to do that because I thought it looked good without them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting my row of pink trees in through here, and then I'll do a soft reflection of them as well. So I'm going to start with my pink in a nice dark version, so that again will give me the ability to put a lot of contrast in the treetop, similarly to how we did the back trees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a teeny dot of black paint on my brush, and I'm going to mix it in with my pink. So this is going to give me like a nice magenta type of version for the pink. Again, I don't need it to be too dark. I don't need to do too much to it. I just want this initial version to be a little bit darker than my pink that I'm going to be using for the vibrant color of the tree. So this is looking pretty good to me. So now that I've got it and my brush is fully loaded right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these trees in place. I'm going to have them larger over here, and they're going to get really kind of small down in through this area. And I'm going to leave a lot of my tree trunks showing. So as I go through this, I'm just dotting. I'm giving it a stippling type of brush stroke. And then as I go through my tree tops, making sure that they come up far enough where you can still see some of that darkness at the bottom of these ones. So again, it provides a little bit of depth and dimension throughout that area as well. And again, trying to keep it inconsistent. So maybe sometimes I bring it down a little bit further. Maybe sometimes I, go up a little bit further. So feel free to explore that kind of undulation of the different heights of the trees. And then as I'm coming down this left-hand side, and you can even leave peekaboo spots of some of the green trees popping through. That would look natural as well. So don't feel that this has to be a solid color all the way through. And I haven't even reloaded my brush. I'm just kind of dotting my way down towards this side over here with the remnants on my brush, leaving myself a little bit of the top and the bottom of my landscape so I can see the tree trunks as well as the stuff up top. That's looking pretty good to me. So while I have this color on my brush, I'm going to just do that reflection in a similar way. So I'm just going to use this remnants, and this one's pretty high in through here, and then I'm just going to kind of go left to right, giving myself a soft little reflection of those trees down in through here, and again just really kind of emulating that similar color down in through here. And then what I'm going to do once I've got this on here, I'm going to start applying a brighter color to the top, similar to what I did on the back trees. So I'm actually washing and drying my brush so I can get a different color pink than that. So I'm washing and drying my brush, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my fluorescent pink with a little bit of white paint. So I'm going to just kind of give myself a nice lighter version of this in through here, and that's going to help to start the process. And you can make it you can really make these trees whatever shade of pink that you want. They come in all different varieties from white to dark magenta, so you can really have fun with this as much as you want. And so I've got that color on my brush, and now I'm just going to kind of start the building process of my highlighted version of these trees. So again, similar to how I did the background ones, I don't need to do the whole thing. I just really am looking to add some nice little pockets of brightness that are going to indicate that maybe we've got some branches that are hanging down, or we've got the little treetops that are being illuminated by the sunshine. I will add white to it in a minute, but right now just kind of giving myself a footprint. I'm leaving some of that darker pink showing, so that way we've got again the dimension that's going to make these look nice and realistic, and they'll pop out of the canvas really well. And again, maybe I'll come down to the bottom and add some of this lighter pink down in through here. And again, I haven't washed my brush. I'm just kind of tapping this into here. And if you're running into wet paint and it's not doing exactly as you want, that's okay. Just let it dry for a minute. I like sometimes just building on these paintings like this while the paint is still wet, but you can certainly, if that's a struggle for you, you can just wait for them to dry. And now I'm going to pick up that light pink plus a tiny bit of white paint on my brush. So now I could use any of these versions plus white, but I just have picked up some white with my dirty brush. And now I'm going to maybe give a couple of different versions of the tree. So maybe we've got a couple of really bright ones. I'm picking up some of my fluorescent pink right now. So maybe this tree ends up being a little bit more pink and this one's a little bit more white. You can, have fun with making them, one tree can be lighter than the other. These can have some really soft edges to them, or they can all look nice and speckly. So my goal is to just kind of make the tippy tops of them look a little bit brighter than that underneath part that you see down in the forest itself. But again, I try not to overdo it. I just picked up a little bit more white paint on my brush. So if I feel that I overdid it and maybe some of them are too white or there's too much white, then what I'll do is I'll just come back and add a little bit more of maybe that light pink on top of it. So you can always kind of just layer them whatever way you feel is visually appealing. But sometimes just letting it dry for a minute too can help to aid in your decision making as you're going through this process. It's looking pretty good to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of come down at the bottom and now just kind of add a little bit more pop into that reflection. Like this one's got a little bit of that pink on it. So in this process, I was using my light pink, white, and my fluorescent pink to provide this highlighted, this final highlight to these trees. And if you have one that's got a real big white spot here, then just when you come down in that reflection, just kind of put that white spot down there, and that's going to tell the viewer, yep, that's a reflection of that specific tree. And that's the way to create a successful reflection, is just carrying that color from the top down into that reflection. It doesn't even have to be a mirror image of it, but if you can carry that color pattern down, and the reflections can be skewed, they can, you know, the water can move them, they could be darker, they could be lighter. So again, it doesn't have to be a mirror image, just something that, you know, represents what you see up top in a loose fashion will work. And then once you've got this done, we're going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So you can play with this as much as you want. Put your large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint some branches. I'm going to be using my medium brush, and I'm going to be using black and brown paint. So I want these branches to just make it appear like we're just kind of peeking through them and we're in this, perhaps, I don't know, a nice spring park, and they're really close to us. So I'm going to make these branches huge, and this landscape is going to be far off in the distance. I'm going to have a big branch coming across the top and through here, and then I'll have one coming down the bottom, and then I'll have some little branches kind of intermingled. So this type of tree that I'm loosely emulating is a cherry blossom tree, and they have really dark branches. So I'm going to go for black and brown as my branches, and then as we build our flowers on top of it, most of these branches are going to be covered up, but you'll be able to see those little peekaboo spots of the dark branches, which will make it look nice and natural. So I'm going to load my brush with black and brown, and I'm going to start with my big branch up top and kind of give myself my footprint of where I want my branches to go. So I'm going to have a big one coming out this top left-hand corner. And as I build these, I'm going to constantly be picking up black and brown on my brush. So sometimes I'll get some big, thick black spots, and sometimes the brown will show through even more. So you can really get some good variation in this dark color by just using both of these colors at once. I'm going to have this one kind of coming over in through here, and I like my branches to be thicker where I feel that they're closer to the tree, and then thinner as they are going closer to the ends of the branches. I'm going to have a couple of flowers way over here, so I'm just making sure that I have the branches to support them. I'm going to also have maybe a branch coming off the side of my canvas in through here. We're going to have it nice and thick. Once I've got the idea of where I want them all, I will then start adding littler branches to make them look more realistic. But right now, just kind of adding my bigger branches on. I'm thinking that that's pretty good. So I'm going to put my bottom one on down here. So I'm going to come out from here pretty thick, and then maybe just kind of bring it down towards the bottom in through here. And these branches can also have a lot of wiggle in them, like bumpiness. So as you're going through the process, don't feel that they have to be straight branches. They don't need to at all. So that's pretty good as to where I want my main branches to go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make just a whole bunch of little offshoots of my branches, and they're going to be thinner. These are going to be where I have my flowers kind of hanging off of, or, you know, displayed at the edges of them. I don't need to do anything that is exact or perfect in this step. I'm really just looking to fill my space with a bunch of little branches. So as I'm going through this process, when I go towards the end of the branches, I lift off on my pressure. So that gives me more of these little like pointy edges to it. But again, I know so much of this is going to be covered by the flowers themselves. So I'm not incredibly concerned about them looking perfect. What I do want to do is just make sure that I don't bring them too close to my landscape, because I want to show that the landscape itself is its own entity. I think I'm going to put one kind of crossing over this front part as I'm saying, don't cover your landscape. I want one to come over my landscape like this, so it adds that perspective. But again, this is just maybe one or two going to give us that little extra oomph of dimensional element. If you're looking to provide that appearance of, of the foreground, if you can, in strategic spots like I just did with this branch, overlap in maybe one or two little areas, that background, that's going to definitely inform the viewer that these are in front of it. So those are just little tiny tricks that you don't want to encapsulate the whole work that you did on that background, but just doing these little tricks will help to bring that foreground forward a bit more. And then once you've got this done, we're going to be using this same brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to do the first layer of our flowers and our leaves on these branches. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm going to use are magenta and green. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting all of my blossoms in place and my leaves in place, but I am doing it in a very loose fashion. When I paint this style of an object or of an element like trees, a lot of nature stuff, I really like it to be more loose and on the impressionistic style, so that way it provides that element of, to me, more realism, as opposed to sitting and going every single petal and making every one super perfect. So I'm going to be building this from the dark, which is going to be my magenta and my green. That'll be my first layer, and I'm going to put it on in a very kind of chaotic fashion. And then as we build our way towards the brighter areas or towards the more detail aspects of it, that's when I'll start to tighten up my details and make some of those petals pop out a little bit more. But during the building process, you can start kind of in a real carefree manner to get those initial dark tones in, and then as you build your way to the lightness, you can tighten up the details. So I'm starting with my magenta that we used, the dark pink, how we used the fluorescent pink with a touch of black in it. I'm starting with that. And this is where I'm going to kind of put all of my blossoms into place. So if I want a big, huge one up in through this area, I'm really just going to swirl in a whole bunch of my magenta color. If I want a couple little buds coming off the ends, I can put it like that. I'm going to put some up in through here. So I'm really going to do a lot of this in a messy kind of way. You can put it really heavy. You can put it where you're going to be able to see through it. You can put little dots for smaller buds. I'm going to just kind of go through it and put a lot of these areas with this pink color or this magenta color, but again, kind of allowing myself to have a little bit of inconsistency. So I do have some smaller areas and some bigger areas. I know that these flowers are have like roundish kind of petals, so that's why I'm choosing to use my brush or apply the paint in a circular fashion, so that will help to aid me in creating a believable petal when it comes time to put those final details in place. So again, just kind of adding these little areas. Some of them are going to be kind of clusters of the flowers. So maybe I've got a little cluster of smaller ones in through here. And you can always put flowers where you don't have a branch. So like I did the little buds over in through here. You can do that because we're going to be putting leaves on it in a minute. So maybe I'm going to have this big, huge one up in through here. And you can see how a lot of my branches are just kind of getting covered as I'm going through this process. And yours will too. This is, you know, what this is all about, building it like this, making those branches first, and then building the flowers on top of it is going to make it look more natural than trying to build those branches in between the flowers. So it's just a nice, easier way to kind of get the process done. Maybe we've got a couple little ones in through here. We've got a whole bunch in this area. And again, make yours as full as you want. Maybe you want more than I'm doing. Maybe you want less than I'm doing, but just kind of allowing for that kind of messiness to happen. Maybe this one is going to be right in front of that little piece of landscape. Maybe we've got some down in through here. And again, have fun with the way that you're applying this. And in a second, I'm going to do a pretty similar process with my green leaves that are going to be in between. So I've got this going on in through here. We've got a bunch on over here. Maybe we've got a big one down in here. And I'm just enjoying the process. I'm not being terribly concerned if anything is perfect at this point. I'm just really kind of adding these color splotches in order to provide me with where I want the definition of the buds to be in a little bit. I think I'm going to have a little cluster of them in through here and over here, and then I think I'm going to pull this one out in this direction here. And I know that I'm going to have some on top of others. There's also these little iconic things for these trees with the buds. They have, sometimes they have almost like these multiple stems with these little dots at the end. So I think I'm going to use that for that one. And then maybe I'll do this one up where I have these little three coming out. So you can add also these little bits of detail. Maybe I've got a little one coming over here. I'm still just using my magenta at this point, and I'll put these little round ones at the end just to give it a little bit of an iconic look. Now I'm washing and drying my brush, and I'm going to put green paint on my brush to do my leaves. So again, I'm just going to kind of go in between and do these little flicks with my brush in between my magenta, and this is going to be the start of my leaves. So I don't even have to do much. I'm just kind of putting on some areas of green in between here. And if I bump into my what's going to be a flower bud, that's okay. This is just giving you that color throughout the tree, and it's going to make it look a lot more natural as you go through that process. And we will be doing little highlights on these leaves in a little bit. So again, if it doesn't look perfect at this point, no worries. I'm really just taking my brush and kind of flicking it out so I have these bits of green throughout the tree as well. And then once we've got this step done, we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So again, have fun with this process. When I'm doing these leaves, I'm not doing them consistently. Some are being pulled a little bit more than others. Some have a little bit more curve than others. You don't have to fill in every single space. Just do whatever is visually appealing to you. And then you can wash and dry this medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the petals on our flowers. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm going to use are white, light pink, fluorescent pink, and if I feel I need to use any of that magenta, I will. But predominantly it's going to be white and the light pink. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting my petals in place and making them nice and light and airy looking. But I know that these trees can have multiple angles that you see the petals at, or the blossoms at. So you can see some from the side, you can see some from head on, you can see them from the bottom or from the top. So you can really see them at all different kinds of angles, and they can be a variety of different shades within the same tree. So I'm going to be going for a lot of like light pink version of these flowers, but you can steer yours to have more vibrancy in the pink to white, and they can all be within the same tree, which is really cool. So you can have fun with that, like a tonal change as you go through it. And I'll definitely have some that are more pink and some that are more white, so I will play with that a little bit too. But I'm going to show you 3 different kind of styles of the petals that I'll be doing, and then I just kind of carefree, do the rest of them in a carefree manner throughout the whole tree. So I'm going to start with this one in through here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my light pink plus white on my brush. I know some of these flowers I'm going to want to have looking at them as if we're going to see them head on. So they're going to have all of these round kind of petals along the edge. So I've got light pink and white on my brush, and what I'm going to do is kind of give myself kind of this almost like these circular type of petals going through here. And I can leave myself the center area to be dark. You can put some on the exterior edge if you want to. And then what I would do is I would come through with maybe a little bit of white and give myself a little bit of highlight on some of those petals. So that would be one style. So again, light pink and white is where I'm going to predominantly start. I've got these little buds kind of hanging. So these could just easily just get a little highlight to them and you can call them done. This one in through here, maybe this one we're seeing from the side. So I have light pink and white, and I can just give myself almost the illusion that we're seeing these petals from the side. And because I have that dark tone underneath, it provides me with varying shades right in it. And then I take up a little bit of white, and then I could kind of separate some of those petals if I wanted to. So that's how I'm going to go ahead and build the whole thing, and I do it pretty quickly. So right now I have, and I'll do multiple flowers at the same time. So if I have several that I want to look like this, like I feel like I'd want a couple in through here to look like this, or at least maybe one or so. So I'm going to do a whole bunch of my round kind of petals. And then once I've got those round petals on there, I pick up a little bit of white. Whoops, missed my white there. And then just give myself a little bit. And I missed leaving that center dark, but I could just rub it in with my finger or rub the paint off with my finger. So something like that. Maybe I've got partial one in through here. So pink plus white. And then again, maybe this is just the side of it and we're seeing it underneath this one. So just have fun with it. Like I'm gonna, now that you've seen quite a few of them, I'm gonna kind of just cruise with my pink and my white on my brush. Maybe I've got one in through here that does this. And again, just because I know that I want several of these to look similar, I can really just kind of explore my painting process and do a couple of them at the same time. So again, I did my light pink, and now I'm just kind of coming through with a little bit of white to highlight some of those petals. And it's a fun process once you kind of get your rhythm going and you see, okay, well, I want these ones to be the circular style. Then you just kind of head on to those ones. Like I think that's a pretty good assembly of my circular style ones. Maybe in this area, I think I'm going to do a couple more over here. I think I'm going to do a bunch of these ones first because I know that these are kind of the main ones that I'm going to see from the front. And sometimes I have a difficult time kind of getting my brain to follow my brush. My brush sometimes will go ahead of speed. So I really at times have to kind of rein in what I'm doing, and I have to do it kind of in a process or in an order. So right now I know that I want to do a bunch of these ones where I'm going to see the center. So I'm going to tackle those right now so I don't get confused. And again, I started with my light pink and white, and now I just kind of pick up a little bit of white to give myself a little bit of highlight on those petals. And you might find that you can do yours in a different process. These other ones in through here, I'm going to have a little bit more chaotic where we're seeing the side of them. I don't want all of them to be seen from the front, so that's why I just kind of want to do those ones first so I don't overdo it. I like to have a lot of chaos, and I call it chaos. Organized chaos is probably a better word for it, but I like to just make sure that not everything looks the same. Again, especially when doing a big, you know, blooming tree like this, if everything looked the same, to me, it just wouldn't look natural. So when I get to these smaller ones that I want to see the center, I think you can at times just kind of push that brush into that kind of circular type of petal and leave it as is. I've got that center showing on that one. I think I'm going to have a couple over here where I'm seeing the center. And again, I'm just kind of giving it those curly, not curly, but soft, rounded kind of edges to it. I've got a couple down at the bottom here. We're going to have some that are, you know, in front of others. So that's always another way to make it look nice and natural. I've got now my white on my brush to just illuminate some of these petals in through here. And I just try and make it so it's not, you know, the same thing over and over again. But if you want it to look like a specific style of leaf or petal, you've got to have some kind of order to it, so it resembles that tree or that flower that you're trying to emulate. So now that I've got that, that's a good amount, I think, with the centers. Ooh, I've got my little poppy ones in through here that I'm going to just add a little tiny highlight. I have these ones up here too. So again, tackling the things that are similar. That helps my brain stay straight. Maybe I'll have a little one in through here where I see the center of it as well. Popping a little bit more white on the edges of these ones. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the chaotic ones from the side. So again, just my light pink with a little bit of white on my brush, and just going to give myself a lot of times it's just going to be kind of mark making. I'm envisioning how I'm seeing these possibly from the side. Maybe this one's got a little petal kind of coming out the edge. Maybe we're just kind of seeing this one from the corner. So again, it doesn't have to be anything other than leaves or petals that you're seeing from the side, you know. And once I've got the main color on there, what I can do, maybe this one's got a couple of different flowers, maybe we've got one there, and then maybe one is in front of it. Once I've got the main petals on there, I just take that white and kind of enhance wherever I feel those edges are going to be, or that I want a little bit more detail to it. Maybe this one we're kind of seeing from the side, and maybe we've got, you know, maybe the cup is in the middle a little bit. So I'm just having fun right now with adding these bits of my pale pink with my white. And if you wanted a bit more pink, I just picked up a little bit more of my fluorescent pink. So maybe in through here, I've got a couple of brighter ones. Maybe this is going to be, maybe we're going to do another one that we see the center. I like this bright pink that I just picked up. And then we've got a couple of little ones in through here. And again, sometimes it's just little mark making. I've got these little kind of blossoms in through here. I've got a couple over here on the sides. So, you know, have fun with it. I've almost tackled them all. I like this additional shade of pink that I've got going on in through here. So just kind of adding little bits here and there. And we've got the iconic look of the way that they go. So once you've accomplished that, the rest is just kind of adding little bits of information. Maybe we've got some other little tiny ones in through here that are just little baby ones. I'm adding a touch more white to my brush right now, just to, maybe we've got a little more extra pop of color in these ones. And then I've got these last couple little ones up in through here, just kind of giving myself that bit of information. And then once we've got this done, we're going to use this same brush for the next step. I'm just kind of making sure I've got them all attended to. I got a couple of little pops back in through here, and you can see I'm just really having fun with giving myself these bits of pink and white little petals. And then I'm going to wash and dry this brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our little leaves throughout the tree. So I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are green, yellow, and white. And what I'm really looking to do is just add a little punch of highlight to make them look like they're just catching a bit of the sun as well, and that they've got a little bit of dimension to them. So You could use all three colors on your brush at the same time, but I think where I'm going to start is I'm just going to make myself first a lighter version of green and start there. So that way I definitely know that I'm going to have a lighter version and not too many variations throughout the leaves. But so I just made a little bit lighter with my yellow, green, and white. And then once I get it going and I've got everywhere where all the highlights where I want, I'll probably just pop in a little bit of white after that. And I don't want them to go too yellow on me, so that's why I pre-mix myself a little light green color. So when I do this, I'm not going to paint the whole leaf, and I may not even paint all of them. I'm just going to kind of strategically pick a couple that I feel that might be popping out a little bit, or some that I feel might need to kind of cover a branch or something along that line. I'm not going to necessarily do all of them, and I don't necessarily need to do the whole piece of it. So I'm really just looking to pop in a little bit of brightness throughout some of these leaves, and then once I've got some little pops of brightness coming out here, and you could even add additional ones, like if you felt a little one should be coming up there, then feel free to put it in there. And then I'm just popping a little bit of white on my brush with that light green, and this will give me just a little bit of extra punch on some of them. And then once I've got this step done, I will be using my small brush for the next step. So I'm just kind of adding these little bits of this light green plus white inside some of these leaves. And this is a great time too to add it, especially when you're getting into maybe this dark water area. If you want something to kind of pop out a little bit more, just adding that bit of brightness into it will help out. And if you do anything that's too much, just bring back some of that original green, and that will help to get it to go back into that darker region. And then I'm going to put my medium brush away, take out my small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the centers of the flowers. So I'm going to use my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are brown, yellow, white, and black. And I'm going to be strategically picking some centers to do. You do not have to do every single one. Even if it appears that you're seeing the center of a flower, like this one in through here, you don't necessarily have to put all the details to it. So I'm going to do a few, so I make sure that I kind of keep the authenticity of these flowers, but you could certainly, you know, skip some of them. You don't have to do all of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start right in the center. I'm using my small brush. I'm going to put brown, yellow, and white all on my brush at the same time. So I have brown, yellow, and white. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of dot in the center in through here. You can change, like I just picked up a little bit more brown and yellow just to give myself a nice kind of speckled type of look on that inside. And I'm going to do a couple in this neighboring area. So I'll do this little guy over in through here. I don't need to do much. I'm just really giving myself some kind of texture within the center of that flower. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I'm picking up a tiny bit of black paint, and you can even use it with a little bit of water on your brush or liquid medium. I'm going to do these tiny little curved little lines coming out the center of the flower, and then I put these little polka dots things on the ends of them. So I think they're called stamen. I could be wrong, but I think that's what they're called. So it's just these little kind of black lines and then these little polka dots at the end. You don't need to do a lot, just a few of them will help. And if you need to wait for that center to dry before you put the little black lines, that's totally fine. Don't, you know, I'm doing it, layering it like this just so you can see it as the viewer, but now that I've showed you those two, I'm going to go through the rest of the canvas just doing the little polka dotted centers first, and then I'll come back and do the little black lines. So brown, yellow, and white on my brush all at the same time, and I'm going to pick the ones that I want to do it in. So I'm going to do this one over in through here, I'll do, and your dark center that you have already might be as much detail, the darkness that you need. You might not even need to, you know, work on that at all. So that's going to be a judgment call on your part. And I'm just going to put it in a few of them. Again, I don't need to do all of them. I'm just kind of dotting in my brown, yellow, and white. I think I'm going to do maybe this one over here, and some of my centers are going to be darker than others. That's the joy of using multiple colors at the same time, so you can get that variety as you go through the process. I think this one definitely needs one in through here. These ones are all from the side. This one in through here. So again, right now, just kind of dotting in those centers. I like that one the way that it is, even though we can see the center. I might want it, but I'm not going to put it. So brown, yellow, and white. I make the decisions. This is my painting, and I get to make whatever decisions that I want. If I want something to have those little you know, details in it, then I put it. If I don't want it, I don't put it. That's the beauty of creating your own painting. You get to make the rules, and the rules can be whatever you want them to be, which is the liberty of making our own artwork. So now that I've got the centers in there of the ones that I want, I think that's pretty good. Now I'm going to just wipe my brush off on my paper towel, pick up a little bit of black, and these don't all have to go straight up. Like, I feel this one might, you know, come off to the side, so I can just do my little black lines off to the side, and then my little polka dots at the end of some of those, and then maybe this one over here, maybe this one comes down. So we can be looking at these flowers from, again, different viewpoints. So if this one is up top and we feel that, you know, we'd be looking at it from a side angle, then that's the angle that I put these black lines in. So just know that they don't all have to go in the same direction. So again, this one, maybe I'll put this one coming out over here. And if you're going through these black lines and you're thinking, my God, that's just too much, back off on it. Use a smaller brush, or don't do as many. So I don't, you know, I think that that's a good amount up there. You know, maybe a little bit in through here, but I don't have to do everything all the same way. So I can give that sense of variety without over painting, and still allowing for the impression of that flower that I'm looking to emulate. I've given, you know, enough information throughout the painting to satisfy, you know, my thoughts as to how much detail that I would want to put in it. And then once I bring it to that point, then that's that. I don't need to overdo it or go too far, you know, into the detail making if I've put as much in it as is making, you know, my painterly eye happy. And that's the part that that is most concerning to me, just to make myself happy. It's about enjoying the process and making art that, you know, feeds your own personal artistic soul. And if, you know, it's good enough for you, then it's good enough. It should be good enough for everybody who's looking at it. And I'm thinking that's pretty good. And then we have one tiny little step left to go, and it's going to be with this small brush. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry the small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm going to be using black paint, and I'm going bottom left on this one. I'm going to hide this little signature. We're going to call it right in here. So I like to sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like for your identifying mark to be is totally fine. It's your painting. You get to sign it however you'd like. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a wonderfully spring blossoming image, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.